Welcome to Cinebuster, the YouTube channel that tells the real stories behind the cars on and off screen. And today, we are talking about 10 cars that were treated like props and are now worth more than some people's houses. Producers drove them off cliffs, through walls, into bulldozers, and in one case, handed the keys to a 13-year-old who had no business behind the wheel. The market has since had a long, quiet think about all of that. And the numbers coming out of auction houses right now would make those production accountants physically ill. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And now, lights, camera, action. Car number 10. Dirty Mary Crazy Larry came out in the spring of 1974 and was Fox's biggest earner that year. Peter Fonda later said he couldn't believe how many people saw it 4 or 5 times. And the car is the reason. The hero is a 1969 Dodge Charger RT 440 Magnum in a color called Citron Yellow, a greenish yellow Chrysler factory paint that every VHS copy and every television broadcast had color corrected to banana yellow because the film processors thought the greenish cast was a mistake. It was not corrected until the 2005 DVD release. 3 Chargers were used in the film. The Hero RT carried the majority of the screen time, did the drawbridge jumps, outran the helicopter chases across rural California, and after production wrapped, a crew member bought it for a couple of $1,000s. He drove it for a while, then his ex-girlfriend borrowed it. She let her 13-year-old sister take it for a spin on a side street. The sister panicked, ended up on a freeway on-ramp, and put the hero car of one of the most beloved Mopar films ever made into a guardrail. It was never restored. The second stunt car currently sits in a backyard in Sun Valley, still wearing the citron yellow paint and the original black stripe, with a primered fender where filming damage was repaired. Its owner has confirmed it is not for sale. A 1969 Charger RT in strong documented condition trades between $100,000 and $400,000 today, depending on engine and options. Nobody thought to insure the hero against unlicensed teenagers. Car number 9. The Ford Falcon XB. The Ford Falcon XB GT is the car that defined the visual identity of the entire Mad Max franchise before any of it existed. The V8 Interceptor, blacked out, supercharged, menacing, became the image of a genre. And it was never sold in the United States. Not a single one crossed the floor of an American dealership. If you want one today, you find it in Australia. You negotiate, you arrange shipping, you navigate the import process. Collectible XB GT coupes now list above $150,000, and the ones in the most desirable configurations go considerably higher than that. Multiple Falcons were used and progressively destroyed across the Mad Max series. The cars that powered a franchise, now worth billions, were treated as consumables, used up, written off, moved on from. The one that started it all, that established the visual language that George Miller would spend 40 years building upon, was gone before anyone in the industry understood what had been created. The Fury Road production had to source and restore Interceptor replicas decades later because the originals no longer existed. The cars that made the franchise irreplaceable were themselves not preserved. Car number 8. In Iron Man 2, Russian villain Ivan Vanko, played by Mickey Rourke, walks onto the Monaco Grand Prix circuit during the race and begins slicing through anything in its path with electrified whips. 2 Rolls-Royce Phantoms were used in that sequence. Each one was valued at roughly $493,000 at the time of filming. Rourke cuts both of them in half on camera. Combined replacement cost? Nearly $1 million on a film that had already spent $170 million in production. The Phantom held its value since then, and current examples trade above 400 grand. What the production casually destroyed in a Monaco sequence would require serious negotiation to replace today. And neither of those two cars exist anymore in any form that would interest a collector. Car number 7. Con Air has a lot of things going on at once. Nicolas Cage, John Cusack, Steve Buscemi, a cargo plane full of the worst criminals in America, and a DEA agent played by Colm Meaney, who is so possessive of his 1967 Chevrolet Corvette 427 that it becomes a recurring gag across the entire film. Then, the cargo plane hauls the car into the air and smashes it through a building. The 427 Big Clot Corvette from 1967 is one of the most desirable configurations ever built by Chevrolet, a car produced in an era where the factory was genuinely interested in making the fastest road-going machine possible. Clean examples in strong condition trade at 100 grand to 180 grand today. The L88 variant, the most performance-oriented of the 427 configurations, sits considerably higher than that. The film played it as a punchline. The auction market has spent the 25 years since treating it as a legitimate collector car, and the gap between what the production thought it was worth and what it is actually worth has only widened. Car number 6. Martin Scorsese knew exactly what he was doing when he put Leonardo DiCaprio behind the wheel of a Lamborghini Countach for one of the most uncomfortable sequences in The Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort, blacked out on Quaaludes, drags himself into the driver's seat and crawls the car home on muscle memory alone, leaving a trail of damage in its wake. 2 25th anniversary editions were used in the film. Only 658 of the models were ever built in total. The hero car got its on-screen damage, but Scorsese decided it barely looked wrecked enough. So the crew used a flatbed truck to inflict additional damage to it off-camera. The hero car and the wrecked car were both sent to auction in late 2023. The pristine hero car sold at R.M. Sotheby's, New York in December of 2023 for $1,655,000, a record for any Lamborghini Countach 25th anniversary ever sold. The wrecked car went to bottoms in Abu Dhabi the month before, estimated at $1.5 to $2 million. The high bid came in at $1.35 million. The reserve was not met. The wrecked Countach, the one DiCaprio actually crawled into, the one Scorsese had his crew additionally damaged with a flatbed because it didn't look destroyed enough, did not sell. In 2013, these were $150,000 cars. The one Scorsese deliberately wrecked and then wrecked further is now worth more than $1 million to whoever buys it. The market has a longer memory than the production did. 5 down, 5 to go. Subscribe to Cinebuster right now and drop in the comments which destruction on this list genuinely hurts you the most. Car number 5. Aston Martin built exactly 10 DB10s for the Spectre production. The car previewed the design language of what would become the next generation of Aston Martins, and was created entirely as a bespoke film vehicle. It never entered production. It was never offered for sale, and nothing like it existed in any showroom anywhere in the world. 7 of the 10 were destroyed during filming. One of the 3 survivors sold at Christie's in 2016 for $3.6 million. Guinness World Records estimated the replacement value of each DB10 at $4.6 million. Which means Bond's production team destroyed roughly $32 million worth of Aston Martin in a single chase through Rome and a river. The DB10 cannot be rebuilt. The tooling does not exist. The configuration was one-off, and the production run is over. What was destroyed is genuinely irreplaceable by any means. That is not a figure of speech. It is a statement of engineering fact. Car number 4.
What's she doing? Shit!
The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona is one of the rarest production muscle cars ever made. Dodge built only 503 hardtop examples in 1969, a car created specifically to win at Daytona Speedway, with an aerodynamic nose cone and a towering rear wing that made it look like nothing else on American roads. Documented Daytona hardtops in strong condition trade at $400,000 to $700,000. When Dom Toretto drives one through a tank chase on a Spanish motorway in Fast and Furious 6 and into a guardrail, the cars used were replicas, not authentic Daytonas, because even Universal Pictures could not justify destroying the real thing. But the template they were replicating, the baseline the production was asking replica builders to match, is a car the market has decided is essentially priceless at the high end. The franchise routinely destroys muscle cars that have since become investment-grade collector vehicles. The Daytona sequence is the most pointed example of that gap between what Hollywood treats as a prop and what the Mopar community treats as irreplaceable history. Car number 3. The Porsche 917K is the most expensive unplanned movie car destruction in the history of cinema. During the filming of the 1971 Steve McQueen film Le Mans, driver David Piper's 917K suffered a tire blowout at high speed during a production sequence and was sent into the barriers. The crash was not in the script, it wasn't planned, and was not a stunt. It was simply a racing car being driven at racing speeds for a film and going wrong in the way that racing cars do when things go wrong. Piper lost a leg in the accident. The car was rebuilt, which is more than can be said for most vehicles on this list. A pristine Porsche 917K sold for $14 million in 2017. That number has continued to climb in the years since, as the 917 has become recognized as one of the most significant racing cars of the 20th century. The car that finally broke Ferrari's dominance at Le Mans and gave Porsche one of its defining victories. Steve McQueen's production company destroyed a car that the current market values at $14 million in an accident, while making a film that lost money at the American box office. The most expensive movie car destruction in film history, and it was never even in the budget. Car number 2. Five 1970 Dodge Chargers were built for the Fast and the Furious. The Hero 1 Dom Charger, the car used for all the close-up and dialogue work, the car sitting in the garage under the tarp, the car Vin Diesel drives at the end, is currently on permanent display at the Volo Auto Museum in Illinois. Its value with screen provenance has been estimated by multiple sources at $350,000 to $500,000. A highly original Hemi RT without film provenance sold at Mecum for $352,000. The screen credit adds a premium that the market is still calculating. The stunt car that took the actual punishment, the one that rolled across the road at the end of the film and was sold to a collector afterward, started its post-production life as a machine that had been physically destroyed on camera and ended it as a restored collector piece. The gap between what those 5 cars were worth in 2000 when production started and what the survivors are worth today represents one of the sharpest value movements in the history of film vehicles. Nobody involved in building the stunt fleet in 2000 anticipated that they were assembling future 6-figure collector cars. Car number 1. Is the greatest American car chase film ever made. There's an argument for Bullitt. There's a case for Two-Lane Blacktop. But Vanishing Point is the one where the car is the whole film, where Kowalski and the Challenger are not separate entities, but a single thing moving through a landscape that wants to stop them. And the car is ultimately as much the protagonist as the man behind the wheel. 5 Alpine White 1970 Dodge Challenger RTs were loaned to the production by Chrysler for $1 a day each. 4 had the 440 cubic inch 4-barrel V8 with a 4-speed manual. The 5th had a 383 with an automatic and was used for camera work. The only modification to any of them was heavy-duty shocks on the car that did the creek jump. Every other sequence was run in factory stock machines, because the 440 producing 390 horsepower was, as Barry Newman himself described it, almost too much power for the body already. All 5 were returned to Chrysler when filming wrapped. What Chrysler did with them is not documented. They are all believed to have been scrapped. Not one has surfaced with authenticated Vanishing Point production provenance. A clean 1970 Challenger RT 440 4-speed in documented condition trades at $100,000 to $200,000 today. A Hemi RT, the range-topping configuration, has crossed $350,000 at auction. Had any of the 5 Vanishing Point Challengers survived with the paperwork to prove it, they would occupy a category that makes those numbers look like a starting point. The most famous Mopar in the history of American cinema is genuinely, completely, and irreversibly gone. Chrysler scrapped the cars that made the most iconic muscle car film ever produced. They got $5 a day for the privilege. That is the most expensive mistake in the history of automotive product placement, and nobody involved in making it has ever been able to explain why. 10 cars. A Charger killed by a 13-year-old on a side street. A Countach that has more than doubled in value since Scorsese put DiCaprio behind the wheel. A Rolls-Royce sliced in half for a Monaco set piece. A Porsche 917K destroyed in an accident that cost the driver a leg and the production a $14 million racing car. And 5 white Dodge Challengers scrapped by the manufacturer who loaned them for $1 a day, ending the only physical evidence that Vanishing Point was ever real. Subscribe to Cinebuster. Drop in the comments which one keeps you up at night, and we will see you on the next one.